Texas out of all places. I don't know. What are your thoughts headed into the playoffs playing Atlanta?
Well, this is a Crew team that I think, I think it's almost cruel irony for this team to, think if a team can go 10 games unbeaten and then end up with Atlanta as your opponent after that. I think the whole purpose for the team of, going on this stretch and continuing the momentum and working at that was to be able to avoid a road game. But when it came down to it in this NYCFC game, all they needed was that last goal, just couldn't quite get it. So they'll be headed to Atlanta. I think for this team, though, they go into the game understanding that it's obviously a very tough place to play. They drew 70+ thousand fans for their regular season finale against Toronto. Mm-hmm. And it's a great atmosphere. It'll be the first playoff game there. So obviously some difficulty there. But I think this is a Crew team that understands it doesn't fear really anybody right now. They know they can play with anybody. If they play their game and they're able to move the ball around, they're able to play out of the back, they should be able to compete with just about any team in MLS. So I think you weigh those two things. So there's obviously some disappointment that they weren't able to clinch a home game or clinch a bye in the playoffs tonight. But I think they are fairly confident heading into the postseason.
Man, I feel like Columbus, we haven't really heard much of Columbus throughout the MLS season through, I guess, the MLS main media. But, Justin Meram's having a good season. And you have to give some context. These guys were, just 2 years removed from an MLS Cup finalist position. They had an off year last year. Now they're back. What's Berhalter's mindset going into the the game against Atlanta?
Well, I think it's just that, I think it's one of confidence. And the word they've used a lot these last few weeks is focus. They feel like that's different. So there's less of a, stress on, okay, we're playing on the road, it's going to be a difficult game, or we're playing at home, this is a game they should win. They feel it like at this point they go into every game thinking they should be able to win. I think since they acquired Pedro Santos for the close of the secondary transfer window, it's given a little bit of a different dimension to their offense. So it gives Ola Kamara a little bit more space. Federico Higuain is healthy. And like you mentioned, Justin Meram has had a solid season. And so the combination of those four players up top has really given them a lot of offensive weapons. And so they feel like they can score with just about any team. Now, Atlanta's, put up a ton of goals this year. Their goal differential for a first-year team is unbelievable. So that certainly will be a test for them. But they feel like they can get into an offensive slugfest with just about any team.
Yeah, how do you think Columbus is going to handle the Atlanta press, especially with the high-flying offense that Atlanta has? Is Columbus going to end up being more of a defensive club in the first 20 minutes, trying to weather that away crowd?
Yeah, I think there will be some of that. I think the issue for this team is when it gets, I would say, too caught up in that. You saw, in large stretches of the first half tonight against NYCFC, they were playing in their defensive third, and then that led them to have some mistakes, and, a Harrison Awful turnover led to a David Villa goal. So, I think it almost would be smarter for them to be aggressive earlier in a game like that. I know that's easier said than done when you're in a building with 70,000 people, but when they're aggressive early, they're usually pretty sound. It's just a matter of not falling into that. Okay, team's pressing us, we have to play out of the back. Every pass is being completed just in the nick of time, because then I think the nerves set in a little bit. So if you can go out and you can be aggressive and attack and get possession of the ball, I think that's when they're at their best. So I think it would be smart for them to be aggressive, but like I said, that's certainly easier said than done.
Yeah, I was just looking at the head-to-head. Columbus actually, over the course of this season, lost the aggregate 5-1. Is there any worry that Atlanta has dominated the club over the course of the two games? You think that's going to have a hangover effect into the game this week?
Those games, it's crazy. It almost feels like a year and a half ago that those games.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's the crazy part for me. And that's the one part where I feel like if there is a chance that the crew has in this game, it's that it's such a different team from what it was in July. And I go back and think about that 2-0 loss at home that they had, and Jonathan Mensah whiffs on a header. Their outside backs get beaten on another goal. And it's these two, transition type goals that, really, were kind of on silly mistakes, and almost, if I remember correctly. I think they'll at least be more competitive. I think they're a more sound soccer team than they were the last couple times they played. But yeah, I mean, that feels so long ago that those two games were.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking. How far do you think this Crew team can go? Do you think they survive against Atlanta on the road and move on? I mean, this Atlanta team is absolutely quality, as I've been saying. I mean, they're only 2 years removed from the MLS Cup appearance. I mean, so do you think this team has potential to win the MLS Cup and contend for it?
Yeah, I was just discussing with somebody, though. I mean, the difficult part for them is to reach. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, to reach MLS Cup, you're going to have to go through Atlanta, Toronto, NYCFC, potentially.
At least, yeah.
Well,
if all best case scenarios work out, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
tough.
That's certainly a difficult road for any team. I think, and obviously this potential relocation story kind of throws a wrench in things, but. I think they go into just about any matchup thinking they can play with the team. Now, as we've said, going to Atlanta is extremely difficult. Going to Toronto is extremely difficult. And the last time the Crew did that, they lost 5-0. So, you go into some of these road games thinking, okay, you can at least contend with the team. But, I'm not sure. I think I'm interested to see how a lot of these young players or players who haven't been in MLS all that long respond to a playoff environment.
Yeah.
But I think if you go into Atlanta and win that game, I don't see any environment where you can't compete. I mean, I think if you can get over that hurdle, that tells this team they can do just about anything. But that's a pretty big hurdle to clear.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. I mean, let's talk about that whole stadium situation. I mean, I feel like the team is put in such a weird situation now. I mean, you have Anthony Precourt, for those who don't know, the owner of the Columbus Crew, coming out and basically saying that he intends to move the team to Austin if the downtown stadium is not found. How is that affecting the team? That has to have some kind of effect.
Yeah, I mean, at least on the surface, they're saying it doesn't. But what else are they going to say? Like I've said, I mean, they're in a very difficult spot because they're residents of Columbus. There are a lot of guys on the team with Ohio ties and have grown up watching the team, and that's how they, grew up with soccer. So that is certainly a difficult part. But they're also employees of the team, and they understand that soccer is at times a business. So it's kind of a tough spot they're put in because they want to be sensitive to the fans as well. So yeah, I'm sure that's weighed on them mentally. And a couple of the players told me tonight it felt like a weight was kind of lifted off their shoulders. So I think at least the initial shock of this and some of the baggage that comes with it, I think a lot of that wore off with this game. I doubt anything will be decided definitively between now and Thursday night when they play Atlanta United. So it'll still be the same situation, but I think the initial burden of this, some of that at least wore off with the NYCFC game. That being said, I mean, there's still a lot to be determined. Down in Austin, there's no set stadium site. Columbus, it doesn't seem like anything's progressing. So, the consensus in Columbus is that the team Anthony Precourt is looking to move the team to Austin. Obviously, things can change at the last minute. Deals can come together at the last minute, but there's a very real possibility that Crew SC is not playing in Columbus after the 2018 season.
So, Andrew, a lot of it has to do with I guess what a lot of these original clubs are struggling with is fan base and growth. And there was something in the contract saying that he was able to move the club. Now, from a cultural perspective, are the Columbus Crew meaningful to the community of Columbus?
I think so. You looked at the first 3 years of the Anthony Precourt ownership. So he bought the team in summer 2013. 2014, 2015, 2016, they had year-over-year growth in attendance. The rebrand of the club was something that was celebrated. You remember the old logo with the construction workers? They changed that into they changed that into the new circle logo. It's a lot cleaner, a lot more modern. Looked a lot more like a soccer logo, to be quite frank. And so all of those changes were applauded. They got a stadium sponsor. They got a new uniform sponsor. The last piece of that, and it's a big piece, is a stadium. So, a lot's been made of their attendance this year being down and their TV viewership being down. I think one thing to point out with that is I think 7 of the last 8 home games this team played, they had 17,000 or more fans. It was, I think, a lot of it due to they struggled a lot in 2016 on the field, went 8-14-12, finished second to last in the Eastern Conference, and people in Columbus show up for a winner. And so earlier in the season, it really impacted their attendance. They had a lot of like Wednesday night games, a lot of cold weather games, and their attendance, they drew really poorly in the first 6, 7, 8 games of the season and couldn't quite pick it up until the summer. And that really set them back. So not to say that one season of attendance is impacting a club moving or not, but I think there is a demonstrated interest in this club in the Columbus market. It just will take some reconfiguring and figuring things out. So, and I think that's the gripe a lot of fans have had with it is it really that bad? So I think that's a question we'll continue to ask over the next few weeks here, but certainly looks like there's a very strong possibility the team's in Austin, like I said, after the 2018 season.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a sad situation. You've seen MLS Original. I mean, I was watching the ESPN Whip Around show for MLS. They talked about the Columbus Crew. They mentioned emotionally it sucks. It really does. But logically it seems to make, I guess, more sense of sorts due to the numbers Columbus have been having and whatnot. Do you think, in your own opinion, that the team would be better off in Austin? I mean, do you think they'd be better off in Austin than in Columbus, or is it kind of just like a wild card? Because that's my take from it. I think it's an unknown, kind of an unknown. Because I mean, the Aztecs were there, and the Aztecs failed, and they moved to Orlando, which is almost the opposite that's happening right here with Columbus moving to Austin. So do you think the team would be much better off moving to Austin?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I think, like you said, I think the word wild card's a good way to describe it because, as MLS mentioned in its statement when this came out, Columbus is near the bottom of the league in most, if not all, business metrics. And so they're struggling in that sense, and there is a revenue gap in that sense. But the thing, we have to understand about Austin is, that we don't know what, we know there is an appetite for MLS there, but there hasn't been a team there aside from, like you said, the Aztecs.
Right.
Now, that's comparing apples to oranges a bit because it's a USL Pro franchise that, in its second iteration was playing at a high school stadium and had to fold due to financial concerns. I don't know if I'd base Austin's viability as an MLS market based off of that. There's certainly a lot of private money there, a lot of disposable income, a lot of sponsorship potential down there. But it is very similar to Columbus in a lot of ways. There's a growing, young population. You would say, a big university town, the university
college town. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So
guys.
Part of the knock on Columbus is that Ohio State football takes away from, whether it's the Blue Jackets or the Crew, takes away from those things. The same argument can be made for, Texas, where football is king, and football specifically is king. So I think it in theory would work down there. I think you need to find the right stadium site in order to make that work, but that's any town. So like you said, I think there's still some wild card aspects to it, but I can certainly see from a financial standpoint and a population standpoint the appeal of it.
The last question here: does the city or do the fans think they're all but gone? This is it.
I think most of them have decided to, if they do go down, they're going to go down swinging. And so we saw the Save the Crew rally at City Hall today. You had a few thousand people, and several notable speakers from the Columbus community. And I think you'll continue to see that. You'll continue to see the Save the Crew hashtag. You'll continue to